Chris Burkard caught my eye because he's a truly remarkable photographer with a stunning portfolio of images from all over the globe. He loves to capture natural light with composition that just draws you in. And it's no surprise that he has a huge following on Instagram. Watch and listen as he gives you tons of tips to advance your photography. Hey Chris, thanks for joining me on my show.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks for having me.
So tell us about your style of photography and the type of work you love to do.
If I could sum up my style, probably just have to be anything, that has to do with natural light. I think that that's what inspires me the most. And not to say that I don't like to experiment with all types of flash or, things like that, but when kind of documenting surf culture, I think it's best done in just, the native scenics that you kind of see around. And I've tried to document a time and a place, and I just try to look for things that I think, are gonna stir up some meaning in people, and inspire them and make them want to follow in, the footsteps of people that, are taking these photographs.
Now, on that note, how do you inspire them? What is that core point that you go after?
Shooting things that I think are attainable to people, shooting things like in places that I feel like people can actually see themselves going, and I mean, sometimes the simple moments are the best, whether you're out camping somewhere and you're shooting just somebody like reading by their headlamp at the middle of the night, or like kind of like a pullback scenic of where you parked your van to hide out for the evening while you're waiting for the surf in the morning, something like that, or whether it's just like late afternoon, evening light kind of beaming down through like some fields, and you're just sitting there watching the waves. I mean, any simple little thing that's going to kind of spark an interest or spark a meaning in someone, I think that's kind of what I aim for, because for me, that's what it is.
Okay, so Chris, let's take a look at how you get your shots.
Yeah.
So what are some of the key things that you use every time you pick up a camera, or even before you pick up a camera?
I've always been about like kind of moody, black and white, the moments in between. Like, I mean, I've shot in the rain, I've shot in the snow. I don't even care, because sometimes that's all part of the trip. You're going to get your A+, great sunny photos, but it's kind of like about building the story. And so I always look for those moments in between, where it's someone maybe just getting ready, or they don't know you're shooting, or you stop and you see something that's just like absolutely beautiful, and maybe it's more than just capturing like that moment, but you want to kind of pull back and see like, okay, this is all beautiful, but what's going to be more interesting? Is it going to be me taking in this moment, or is it going to be the people I'm with? What is their reaction, and kind of pull back and see like, what are they thinking? What are they experiencing? Maybe they're like jumping up and down, looking at the surf or something like that, or waxing up their boards, or frantically doing this or that. And I think that when you stop and think about what's going to be the most significant thing, a lot of times it's not necessarily what you're seeing, but it's what someone else might be seeing. And so if you kind of take a step behind them, that's a good way to try and survey things too.
So listen, how about tips for good lighting?
I think good lighting is all about kind of the eye of the beholder. I think that there's moments that can be found even when it's just your average everyday flat lighting, overhead. I love looking at a lot of the black and white work of the old masters, and they would just find interesting ways to manipulate shadows in midday light, and make the most beautiful images. And for me, I get the most inspired in evening afternoon light. I think when you get those moments where you're kind of like studying the sunset and like, what's it going to do? What's it going to do? Is the sun going to pop out for a bit and just light up the sky? And I think those great moments are when you do get that brilliant light, for those minutes, hour, however long it lasts, and you light up all your subjects with that golden light, and behind them just that dark blue. I think that's the ideal, and you kind of get those moments. But when you're shooting the ocean, it's always unique. I think early morning, late evening is always going to be beautiful no matter what.
Yeah. How about composition? You already talked about it a bit. Any other tips or advice in terms of getting great composition?
I'm looking for just things that kind of stack up and lead your eye away. Whether it's a straight line, or whether it's the angle of the beach or something like that. Framing is key. Whether it's a branch, or you can take the most average mundane shot of just a beach with maybe a simple backdrop, and you kind of put a branch in there. You kind of peek through a tree or out a doorway or a window, and you just add an instant frame that kind of offsets your photo and makes that much more unique.
What would you say some of your biggest challenges have been as a photographer?
Trying to find a really good angle. I don't know if other photographers have these problems, but I mean, I try. it's work. I stress about it. You know, I think about it, and I think about what's going to set me apart. You know, I mean, you know, it's a difference between a cover shot and not. You know, it's the difference between making money and not making money. You know, it's everything.
Cool.
So, yeah.
What do you think that, if you had to distill the essence of getting that cover shot, what do you think those elements are?
I would say there's like 4 things or 5 things, you know, and it's composition, light, depth, contrast, and then just mojo, whatever you want to say at the
What's
end.
What's the
right?
mojo?
I don't know. That would be like the moment, you know. I think the mojo, the moment, right? The somewhere in between like 8 frames a second and 10 frames a second is usually the mojo. But in reality, I think it's just finding the moment where kind of all those things come together. And, you know, it could be the difference between like squatting down and shooting and standing up and shooting. Like
Okay.
that's the scary thing about it. I mean, there's been times, you know, there was a time in Santa Cruz actually 3 years ago when there was a photographer standing 60 feet behind me who was shooting with a 500 millimeter lens, and he got the cover. And I got a full page in another magazine. Same photo, same moment, everything. I was shooting pulled back. And personally, I like my angle better, but whatever. That's just me. And he was shooting tight, and it worked for the cover. Mm-hmm. You know, it worked for that moment. It worked for that. And it was just so surprising because that was one of those moments where it was like, it's just me and him here, you know? We're the only ones here. Great surfers out. Waves were going off. But just that difference, you know? And so I think that when you come on a scene like this, you really got to fight to find the angle. You got to fight to find where it is that you're going to be positioning that's going to make you set apart. A lot of those times, those great moments you see are not the product of just random photos being taken. They're the product of studying your subject, studying your landscape, studying those things. At least that's what I do, because it doesn't come easy to me. It never has. Mm-hmm. And it's not something that I take, you know, on just, you know, a whim. Oh, I'm going to show up and the waves are going to be going off and I'm going to get the shot. I mean, there's probably hundreds of photographers that do that, you know, but getting the actual moment that I think signifies, you know, that moment in time, you know, what it was like, what it feels like, that's everything. And a lot of times it's just a matter of, you know, looking at where you're going and where you're going to be, and studying like you would a manuscript or something, you know? I mean, just looking at all the elements. And I know a lot of times before I go places, I'll spend like a couple evenings on Google, you know, looking at conditions and this and that and other photos that have been taken, you know, because I don't want to replicate anything and I kind of want to put my mark on it. And that's just maybe my own, you know, perfectionism, whatever, but that's how I like to do things. So,
cool.
Yeah. And so for me, I've tried to take a real natural approach always and really shoot in the best light possible. And, you know, if I'm not shooting in the best light possible, then, you know, why am I shooting in that light? Ask myself that, you know, if it's not going to be good for black and white, you know, if it's not going to be good for this, then, you know, what is it going to be good for? You know, is this just a moment in between? And great California greens, and you get such beautiful light off the ocean. It's like, who wants to manipulate that?
Yeah.
So.
Chris, any final advice for viewers who want to get better shots?
When it comes to getting better shots, I think that any person that tries to develop a style and sticks with it is going to really find, I think, greater results than trying to be kind of the mediocre at everything, you know? I find that sometimes for me, it's like I try to translate the same style that I interpret surf through everything else, you know? And whether that's like some moody backlit silhouette shot, you know, with some clouds or something, I want to translate that in everything, you know, and I kind of look for that too. And I think that if we want to excel in other areas, the best thing we can do is just stick to the ones that we know and try and translate those into others. I've always tried to approach surf photography as I would my landscapes. I've always tried to portray the scene, portray the feeling, and take a step back. You know, before I go in tight, I always take a few steps back, kind of look at what that'll look like first. I just try to translate the things I do well and interpret them through my style, and I think they've been able to work. So,
hey Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Marc.
Really been great to have you here.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching my interview with Chris. We'll be rolling out a lot more videos, so please subscribe now. Follow me on Instagram and Chris too. And be sure to check out our website for updates and subscribe there so you don't miss any. And check out Chris's website to see more of his amazing work. Hey, we love it when you share our videos, when you like us and leave your comments, your questions, how you like the video, and what would you like to see from us next. And until next time, get out and capture your own images of life.